They called me a temp nurse before the helicopters touched the roof. Not to my face at first. People rarely insult you directly when they still need your hands. They said it behind the nurses' station, beside the medication scanner, near the trauma bay doors where voices carried better than people thought. "Just a temp," one of them whispered. "She'll be gone by Friday. Don't give her anything complicated." I was standing 3 feet away with a box of IV tubing in my hands, restocking a crash cart that had been opened twice that morning and put back wrong both times. I did not correct them. I did not introduce myself properly. I did not tell them that before I became the woman they called temporary, I had spent 6 years moving wounded soldiers through smoke, sand, rotor wash, bad maps, broken radios, and command decisions that arrived 10 minutes late and still expected miracles. I did not tell them the name I used to answer to. I was not there to be known. I was there for a 12-hour agency shift at St. Elia's Military Medical Center, Unit 4B Emergency Intake, where civilian staff worked beside uniformed medical personnel, and everyone was tired enough to be cruel. My badge said, NORA Vale. RN, temporary staff. That was the name I used now. Nora Vale. 40 years old. Quiet. Professional. Replaceable. No one in that ER knew the call sign Angel 6. At least, that was what I believed, until the wounded ranger grabbed my wrist with a hand that was already going cold and whispered it like a prayer. Before I tell you what happened when the colonel heard him say that name, ask yourself this. If you had buried a part of your life just to survive it, would you step forward when strangers needed that version of you again? My name is Nora Vale. 3 years before that day, I disappeared on purpose. Not legally. Not dramatically. I did not fake my death or vanish into the mountains. I simply stopped answering calls from people who only knew how to reach me when someone was bleeding, missing, unstable, or impossible to move. I left active service after a medical board used careful language to explain what my body had already been telling me for months. Chronic nerve pain. Reduced grip strength. Residual trauma response. Limited field deployment capacity. That last phrase looked clean on paper. It did not include the night I woke up on my kitchen floor because a garbage truck outside sounded too much like a rotor blade losing rhythm. It did not include the way my hands would shake before storms. It did not include the guilt of leaving before I stopped hearing voices calling for medics. So I became a civilian nurse. Not a hero. Not a legend. Not the person people looked for when the room was already falling apart. I took agency shifts because they let me remain temporary. A name on a schedule. A body filling a hole. A nurse who came, worked, clocked out, and left before anyone asked questions about old scars or why I always checked exits before I checked the coffee machine. St. Elia's was supposed to be another shift. Nothing more. I arrived at 6:14 in the morning with wet hair twisted into a low bun, blue-gray scrubs under a clean white scrub jacket, and a travel mug full of coffee strong enough to qualify as a controlled substance. The hospital sat on the edge of a joint military base, close enough to hear morning formation calls when the wind moved right. It treated service members, veterans, military families, and overflow from the nearby civilian trauma network. Half the people in the building wore scrubs, the other half wore uniforms. Everyone thought their half was holding the place together. The charge nurse was named Denise Rucker. She was 50, sharp-faced, and carried a clipboard like a weapon. Her hair was pinned so tightly it looked painful, and she had the permanent expression of someone disappointed by the concept of other people. She looked at my badge before she looked at my face. Temporary staff. Yes. Our experience. Some. Military hospital experience. Some. She made a small sound. Not quite a laugh. Not quite a dismissal. Worse. Agency sends us all kinds, she said. You'll stock carts, move stable patients, answer call lights, clean bays, and help with vitals. Do not touch central lines. Do not lead trauma intake. Do not argue with physicians. If you do not know where something is, ask one of my core nurses. We run tight here. I looked past her at the whiteboard. 3 open beds. 2 pending transfers. 1 high-risk cardiac patient waiting for transport. 1 pediatric asthma case. 2 intoxicated soldiers sleeping off bad decisions under observation. The board was not tight. It was lying politely. "Yes, ma'am," I said. Denise narrowed her eyes like she had expected resistance and been robbed of it. "Good." She handed me a stack of linen and pointed toward Bay 6. "Start there." I started there. That was how my day began. Cleaning a bay after a young private vomited into everything except the basin provided to him. I changed sheets, wiped rails, replaced suction tubing, restocked gloves, emptied trash. I did it thoroughly because invisible work matters, even when people look down on it. By 9:30, I had cleaned 3 bays, transported 1 veteran to imaging, helped an elderly spouse find the cafeteria, replaced oxygen tubing for a man who kept apologizing for needing help, and caught a medication label mismatch before anyone administered it. Nobody noticed the medication error. That was the point of catching it. The resident who almost gave it was Dr. Kyle Berman. He was 31, clean-cut, ambitious, and allergic to correction. He had the kind of confidence that came from being wrong in rooms where nobody punished him for it yet. When I stepped closer and said, "That label does not match the order," he froze. Then he looked at my badge. "Temporary staff." "I know how to read an order," he said. I kept my voice low. "I'm sure you do. This one still does not match." He snatched the vial from my hand, checked the screen, then checked the label again. His ears went red. Instead of saying thank you, he said, "Next time bring it to the primary nurse." "I did," I said. He frowned. "I'm the physician. And Denise is the primary nurse for this bay." I turned and walked away before he decided whether to be embarrassed or angry. Denise found me 10 minutes later near the supply room. "Dr. Berman said you interrupted him." I prevented a medication mismatch. Her eyes flicked toward the medication room. Then back to me. "Did you document it?" "Yes." Her mouth tightened. "You agency nurses always come in trying to prove something." I stacked a box of saline flushes without looking at her. "I came in trying to finish a shift." "Then stay in your lane." I looked at her then. "Just once." "Which lane is that?" She pointed to the cart. "Stalking." So I stalked. At 11:42, the first real test arrived. A military spouse named Mrs. Leary came in with chest pressure and jaw pain. She was 62, pale under her makeup, and apologizing for taking up space while her EKG printed in jagged warnings. Dr. Berman glanced at it and said, "Could be anxiety." I was standing by the curtain, holding a blood pressure cuff. I looked at the EKG. Then at Mrs. Leary. Then at the clock. "Doctor," I said quietly, "you may want to look at leads II, III, and AVF again." He did not turn. "I saw them." "Then you saw the elevation." His shoulders stiffened. Denise looked up from the charting station. Mrs. Leary's husband, a retired master sergeant with hands like shovels, looked between us. Dr. Berman stepped back to the printout. His face changed. The room accelerated. Aspirin. Nitro evaluation. Cardiology page. Transfer protocol. Within 4 minutes, Mrs. Leary was being moved to the resuscitation bay. Within 18, she was transferred upstairs for intervention. Dr. Berman did not look at me after that. Denise did. Not with respect. With suspicion. That was fine. Suspicion is quieter than condescension. At 12:30, I took my lunch in the staff break room. The refrigerator smelled like onions and betrayal. Someone had microwaved fish. The table wobbled. A television in the corner played a home renovation show where nobody seemed to have medical debt or trauma. I sat alone. That was how I preferred it. I had a protein bar, coffee gone lukewarm, and 2 ibuprofen I should not have taken on an empty stomach. My left hand tingled. I flexed it slowly under the table. Open. Close. Open. Close. Most days it obeyed. Some days it negotiated. A nurse named Trina walked in while I was staring at my fingers. She was younger, maybe 26, with kind eyes and the exhausted posture of someone who still cared too openly. "You okay?" she asked. "Yes." She sat across from me without asking. "You don't talk much." "I talk when needed. That scares people here." "Good." She laughed once, surprised. Then she lowered her voice. "Denise is hard on temps." I noticed. She thinks agency, nurses mess up her system. Her system is already messed up. Trina's eyes widened. Then she covered her mouth, trying not to smile. "You're not wrong." The break room door swung open before she could say more. Dr. Berman stood there. He looked at Trina, then at me. "We need help in Bay too, not you," he added quickly. "Trina." Trina stood. I stayed seated. Berman's gaze landed on my badge again. "Temporary." "Actually," he said, "when you're done with your break, the utility room needs cleaning." Trina looked uncomfortable. I nodded. "Of course." He left. Trina whispered, "That was rude." "Yes." "You're not mad." "I have been insulted by professionals." She blinked. I drank my bad coffee. The first helicopter came at 14:07. Not the sound. The feeling. A deep vibration through the floor that traveled up the legs of the chair before the windows began to tremble. My body recognized it before my mind allowed the information in. I stopped breathing. The television kept chattering about kitchen cabinets. Trina frowned. "What is that?" I stood. The second vibration rolled through the building. Heavy. Low. Military. Not a civilian medevac bird. Not the smooth, high whine of hospital transport. This was weight and power and urgency. The kind of rotor rhythm that had once meant someone was either coming home alive or being carried home under a sheet. My hands went cold. No. Not here. I pushed open the break room door. The ER had not noticed yet. Denise was arguing with radiology. Dr. Berman was writing orders. A child was crying behind curtain 3. The monitors beeped their normal lies. Then the red emergency phone rang at the charge desk. Nobody moved. It rang again. Denise stared at it like it had insulted her. I was already walking. She picked up before I reached her. "St. Elia's ER, charge nurse Rucker speaking." The color left her face. "What do you mean inbound? We weren't notified." She listened. Her hand tightened around the receiver. "We are not a level 1 trauma intake for direct operational transport. You need to route through base command and..." She stopped. The helicopter sound deepened until the glass doors shivered. Outside, people began shouting. Denise whispered, "How many?" Then louder. "How many?" She dropped the phone back into the cradle. For 1 second, she looked very small. Then training, or panic pretending to be training, took over. "Mass casualty standby," she shouted. "Clear Bay 1 and Bay 2, trauma carts now. Call surgery. Call blood bank. Call security. Berman, get Eris down here. Trina, move that family out of the hall. Everybody move." The ER exploded into motion. It was not coordinated motion. It was fear with wheels. A crash cart slammed into a doorframe. Someone dropped a stack of sterile trays. Berman shouted for supplies he had not looked for. Denise yelled 3 instructions at once, and none of them landed. I stood by the medication room door and told myself not to move. Not my life anymore. Not my unit. Not my call. I was a temp nurse. I stocked carts. I cleaned bays. I stayed out of the heavy lifting. Then the ambulance bay doors burst open. 4 soldiers came in first. Not hospital security. Not paramedics. Soldiers. Dust on their boots, sweat-dark uniforms, tight faces, controlled panic. One of them had a bandage across his forehead. Another carried a radio. 2 pushed a gurney so fast the wheels lifted over the threshold. On the gurney was a ranger. I knew he was a ranger before I saw any patch, because of the way the other men moved around him. Protective. Angry. Terrified. He was conscious, barely. Mid-30s. Face gray, jaw clenched, breath shallow. His right arm was strapped across his chest. His leg was stabilized. There was pressure dressing under his ribs. Not enough blood to scare the civilians, enough to scare anyone who knew what hidden bleeding looked like. Behind them came a colonel in an army service uniform, moving faster than his age should have allowed. Tall, broad, silver at the temples, eyes taking in the whole room at once. That was a man used to being obeyed. Denise rushed forward. "I'm charge nurse Rucker. What do we have?" One of the soldiers ignored her and scanned the room. "Where's the trauma lead?" Dr. Berman stepped up. "I'm Dr. Berman. Start report." The soldier looked at him. Not impressed. Training range structural collapse, blunt trauma, possible internal bleed, airway intact but unstable, pressure dropping en route. He kept refusing sedation. "We need." The ranger on the gurney grabbed the soldier's sleeve. "Don't let them." His voice broke. Berman moved closer. "Sir, you're safe. We need to assess you." The ranger's eyes rolled toward him, unfocused but sharp with fear. "No." Berman looked annoyed. "No." The ranger tried to sit up. "Bad idea. Very bad." 2 soldiers held him down. The monitor screamed as Trina connected leads. Heart rate high. Pressure low. Oxygen borderline. Pain, shock, something internal not yet obvious. Denise turned to me. "Temp, get back." I had not realized I had stepped forward. I stopped. The colonel was speaking into a phone now, jaw tight. "No, I do not care what the intake protocol says. I want her found." My spine went cold. Berman tried again. "We need to move him to trauma. Sir, can you tell me your name?" The ranger stared at the ceiling. "Find her." The colonel turned. "Sergeant Cole, say that again." The ranger's eyes fluttered. His hand moved blindly in the air. "Angel 6. The room did not understand. I did. The name crossed the ER like a hand, reaching through years and closing around my throat. Angel 6. Not Nora. Not Temp. Not nurse. Angel 6. I took 1 step back. My shoulder hit the wall. The colonel's head snapped toward the sound. His eyes moved over the staff. Denise. Trina. Berman. The techs. Then me. For half a second, nothing happened. Then his expression changed. Recognition is not always loud. Sometimes it is a door opening behind the eyes. He stared at me. "Nora Vale," he said. The name was careful. Civilian. He did not trust the room yet. I did not answer. The ranger turned his head toward the sound of the colonel's voice. His eyes found me. He smiled. God help me, he smiled. "Angel," he whispered. Denise looked from him to me. Berman frowned. "Does someone want to explain why my patient is asking for the temp nurse?" No one answered. The ranger's monitor dipped. Pressure falling. Respiration changing. His skin took on that waxy tone I had seen too many times in too many places. The ER blurred at the edges. And suddenly, I was not standing in St. Elia's. I was back in a field treatment corridor under emergency lights, with a radio cutting in and out, and 6 names on a board that only listed 5. My hands stopped shaking. That was the part that always scared me most. Veer shook. Training steadied. I walked forward. Denise caught my arm. "Where do you think you're going?" I looked at her hand on my sleeve, then at her face. "Let go." She did. Berman stepped in front of me. "No, absolutely not. This is not your case." The colonel's voice cut through the air. "Doctor, move." Berman turned. "Excuse me." The colonel stepped closer. "I said move." Berman looked at Denise, then at the soldiers, then at me. "This is a hospital, not a battlefield. I'm the physician in charge." I looked at the ranger. His breathing hitched. His left hand curled against the sheet. I saw the clue then. Not obvious. Not dramatic. Small. The way his abdomen tightened on exhale, the angle of his shoulder, the pressure dressing too high to explain the drop, the bruising pattern beginning under his vest line. Internal bleed. Likely splenic. Maybe more. He needed imaging, blood, surgery, and someone to stop wasting seconds protecting egos. "Massive transfusion protocol," I said. No one moved. I turned to Denise. "Call blood bank, O negative now. Type and cross immediately. 2 large bore lines. Warm fluids only. Get ultrasound in here. Page trauma surgery and tell them we have a probable abdominal bleed with shock signs. Move him to Bay 1. Keep his head slightly elevated. Do not oversedate him until airway is secured." Berman's mouth opened. I did not wait for his permission. "Trina," I said. Her eyes locked on mine. "Left arm IV. If it collapses, go IO. Do not let anyone fish around for 3 minutes trying to be gentle." She nodded and moved. "Denise." The charge nurse looked furious. And frightened. "Good. Blood bank now." She hesitated. The colonel said, "Do it." She ran. Berman grabbed my elbow. "You do not give orders in my ER." I looked down at his hand, then at his face. "I am trying to keep him alive long enough for you to be right later." His fingers loosened. The soldiers moved with me, not against me. That told the room everything. We rolled the ranger into Bay 1. The ER staff followed, half in panic, half in disbelief. The colonel stood near the doorway, but did not interfere. He watched me the way commanders watch a map when they know one person inside it understands the terrain. The ranger's eyes kept drifting toward me. "Cole," I said. His gaze sharpened. "You know me. You said Angel 6. That means you know the rules." His breathing was ragged. "Count them." I froze. Those 2 words hit harder than the call sign. Count them. Years earlier, in a place I never named publicly, that had been my rule. Nobody moved until the board matched the bodies. Nobody was probably accounted for. Nobody became a missing line because the room was loud and everyone was tired. The colonel heard it too. His face changed again. Berman said, "What is he talking about?" "He's dissociating," I said, "and reminding me to do my job." I leaned closer to Cole. "How many were with you?" His lips parted. 4. The soldier beside him said, 4 on range. We brought all 4. Cole's eyes squeezed shut. "No." The room tightened. I looked at the soldier. "Where are the others?" 2 walking wounded in transport. 1 stable at base clinic. Him here. 4. Yes. Cole's hand moved again. 5. The colonel turned sharply. "Say again." Cole's voice was barely air. Observer. One of the soldiers swore. Not loudly. Enough. The colonel grabbed his radio. Range control, this is Hayes. Confirm all personnel from the collapse site. I need observer status now. Berman stared at us. This is not relevant to his immediate care. It is if someone is still under rubble, I said. The ultrasound arrived. Blood arrived. Trauma surgery called back. Everything accelerated. I worked inside the noise. That is the strange gift of old training. You hear less but understand more. Trina got the line. Denise returned with blood and avoided my eyes. Berman tried to regain control by giving orders I had already given. I let him, as long as they were correct. The ultrasound showed free fluid. Trauma surgery came running. Cole's pressure dipped again, then held after transfusion began. He needed the OR. That much was clear. As they prepared to move him, the colonel's radio crackled. A voice came through. Observer located. Alive, pinned but conscious. Extraction underway. Cole's eyes opened. Barely. I leaned down. 5 accounted for. His grip found my wrist again. Not strong. Enough. Still Angel, he whispered. Then he let go. They moved him to surgery. The bay emptied in pieces. The soldiers followed. Berman went with the surgical team, perhaps because it looked better to be involved than to remain behind in the room where everyone had seen him stopped. Denise stood by the counter with blood on one glove and no idea what to do with her hands. Trina looked at me like she had just watched a wall turn into a door. The colonel remained. He walked toward me slowly. The ER had gone quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that happens after people realize they have been disrespectful to someone they should have feared, or honored, or at least listened to. He stopped in front of me. Nora Vale, he said. This time, not a question. I nodded once. Colonel. He studied my face. You changed your name. I shortened my life. That does not answer the question. It answers enough. A faint sadness crossed his eyes. He understood. Men like him often did. He extended his hand. I did not take it immediately. My right hand was clean. My left was not steady. He noticed and lowered his hand slightly, not withdrawing, not forcing. Respect is often measured in what someone does not make you explain. I shook his hand. Colonel Hayes, he said. I know. You remember me. You were younger, louder, bleeding less. He almost smiled. Your reputation was accurate. That depends which reputation. The one that said, if Angel 6 told you to move, you moved. The staff heard it. Every word. Denise's face drained further. Trina covered her mouth. I released his hand. I'm not that person anymore. Colonel Hayes looked toward the corridor where they had taken Cole. You were when it mattered. That was the kind of sentence that could break a person if it landed in the wrong place. I looked away first. Denise stepped forward carefully. Colonel, I think administration will need to speak with. He turned to her. Administration can wait. She stopped. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. He looked around the ER. Every person in this department should understand something. That woman you dismissed as temporary has more operational medical experience than half the officers I have served with. If she tells you a patient is crashing, you move. If she tells you to count again, you count again. If she tells you to stop wasting time, you thank her and stop wasting time. No one spoke. Then, in front of the entire emergency department, Colonel Hayes saluted me. It was not ceremonial. It was not theatrical. It was worse. It was real. The ER froze. I felt every eye on me. The old instinct rose automatically. Return it. But I was in scrubs. Civilian. Temporary. Hiding. My hand moved anyway. A proper salute, sharp enough that muscle memory corrected what grief had tried to bury. The colonel held it for 1 second, then dropped his hand. The silence afterward was unbearable. So I broke it the only way I could. "Trina," I said. She jumped. "Yes." "Bay 1 needs reset before the next emergency. Restock suction, airway, rapid infuser tubing, and pressure bags. Denise, blood bank needs documentation. Dr. Berman will need Cole's timeline clean before surgery asks for it. Somebody find out whether the observer is coming here or base clinic." They moved. All of them. No argument. No smirks. No temp. No just a nurse. For the next hour, the ER ran better than it had all day. That irritated me more than it should have. Respect should not require a colonel. Competence should not need a witness. But I had lived long enough to know that people often need authority to recognize what was already in front of them. At 16:20, Cole went into surgery. At 16:38, the observer was confirmed stable and transported to base clinic. At 17:05, Colonel Hayes returned from a command call and found me in the supply room counting chest tube kits. "You hide in practical tasks," he said. I did not turn around. They need counting. So did people. That landed. I placed another kit on the shelf. I left that life. "Did you?" "I am a temp nurse. You are Angel 6 in temporary clothing." I turned then. The supply room was narrow, lit too brightly, full of cardboard boxes and antiseptic smell. "I did not leave because I stopped caring," I said. His expression softened. "I know." "No, you don't." He accepted that. "Good." "I left because every time someone called that name, I was back there. Every board, every missing number, every patient whose pulse faded before transport, every person who lived and every person I counted too late." The words came out flatter than they felt. That was how I survived saying them. Hayes was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded cloth patch. Not dramatic. Not bloodstained. Clean. Old. A faded angel wing, stitched above the number 6. My throat closed. "I was asked to give you this if I ever found you," he said. "By who?" "Captain Mercer." The room tilted slightly. Mercer had been my field surgeon during the evacuation that ended my career. She had held my shoulder together with pressure and profanity until transport arrived. She had also been the first person to say I needed to stop before stopping became death. "She's alive?" I asked. "She is." He held out the patch. "She said you would refuse it." "She knows me." "She said to tell you refusing does not make it less yours." I stared at the patch. Old thread. Old name. Old life. My hand shook when I took it. This time, I did not hide the shaking. Hayes pretended not to notice. Another kindness. "Nora," he said, "Cole will likely live." I closed my eyes. Likely. Medicine is full of words that refuse to promise too much. Likely was still beautiful. Good. And the observer is alive, because Cole remembered your rule. I opened my eyes. "Count them." Hayes nodded. "Count them." For a while, neither of us spoke. Then the supply room door opened. Denise stood there. She looked smaller without the clipboard. "Sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't know." I interrupted. "That I was useful." Her face flushed. "That you were." She stopped. "Good." Some sentences should die unfinished. I slid the patch into my pocket. "I'm scheduled until 7, I said. "Where do you need me?" Denise blinked. "What?" "I'm still on shift." She looked at Hayes, then back at me. "The board is backed up. Then we should fix it. That was all. I returned to the ER. And the strangest thing happened. People made room. Not too much. Not in a dramatic hallway, parting like a movie. Just enough. A tech moved a cart before I had to ask. Trina handed me gloves in my size. Denise gave me the board without comment. Even Berman, when he returned from surgery pale and sweat damp, did not argue when I corrected a transfer note. He said, "Thank you." It sounded painful. But he said it. Cole survived surgery. I found out at 1812. Colonel Hayes received the update first, then looked across the ER at me and nodded. One nod. That was all. It was enough. By the time my shift ended, the hospital had learned 3 versions of the story. In one, I was a secret special operations medic. In another, I had once commanded a field hospital. In a third, which came from someone with more imagination than accuracy, I had saved a general using only a paperclip and a prayer. People do that. They cannot accept quiet competence, so they turn it into legend. The truth was simpler. I was a nurse. I had served. I had survived. I had hidden. And when someone said Angel 6 in a room full of strangers, I answered. At 1904, I changed out of my stained scrub jacket in the staff locker room. My undershirt smelled like antiseptic and old adrenaline. My hands hurt. My left shoulder throbbed with a deep, punishing rhythm. I stood at the sink, washed my face, and looked at myself in the mirror. 40. Tired. Not temporary. Trina came in quietly. "I'm sorry," she said. "You didn't do anything. I heard them call you Temp. I am Temp. You know what I mean." I dried my face with a paper towel. She shifted. "Are you coming back tomorrow?" I looked at my badge on the counter. NORA Vale. RN, temporary staff. Then at the patch beside it. Angel Wing. 6. I'm scheduled. Trina smiled a little. Good. When I walked out, Denise was at the nurse's station. She did not apologize. Not exactly. She said, "Bay assignments are posted for tomorrow. I put you in trauma intake." I looked at her. "You sure?" "No," she said. "Honest." Then she added, "But I'm not stupid." That was the best apology she had available. I accepted it by not making her repeat herself. Outside, the evening air was cool. The helicopter pads were empty now. No rotor wash. No shouting. No soldiers running toward glass doors. Just the low hum of hospital generators and the distant sound of traffic beyond the base gate. Colonel Hayes stood near a black SUV, speaking with 2 soldiers. When he saw me, he excused himself and walked over. "You have my number now," he said. "I don't need your number." "You might." "I won't." He smiled like a man used to stubborn people. Then he handed me a card anyway. "Captain Mercer also said you would say that." I took the card. "She's annoying." "She said you would say that too." For the first time all day, I laughed. It surprised both of us. Hayes's face softened. "Nora," he said, "hiding is not the same as healing." The laugh left. "I know. But sometimes hiding keeps you alive until you can do the next thing." I looked at the darkening sky. That was the first thing anyone had said about my disappearance that did not sound like accusation. "Maybe," I said. He nodded. "Cole asked for you." My throat tightened. "He's awake." Briefly, mean as hell. Good sign. He said to tell Angel 6 he counted 5. I looked down. The pavement blurred. I blinked once. Then again. Hayes pretended not to see that too. He also said you still owe him an argument about sedation. He was wrong. I assumed. We stood there in silence. Not uncomfortable. Just full. Finally, he saluted once more. This time smaller. Private. I returned it. Then I walked to my car. My beat-up gray sedan looked absurd in the staff lot, parked between a lifted truck with military stickers and a spotless SUV that probably cost more than my apartment. I sat inside for several minutes before starting the engine. The patch was in my pocket. I took it out and placed it in the cup holder. Angel 6. The name no longer felt like a ghost. Not exactly. More like a room I had locked and finally admitted still existed. The next morning, I returned to St. Elia's. Not because I had transformed overnight. Not because one salute healed anything. Healing does not work like that. I returned because my schedule said 7 a.m., and because patients do not care whether your identity crisis is complete. Denise handed me the trauma board without commentary. Trina brought coffee. Berman avoided eye contact until 10:15 when he asked, "Would you look at this chest film?" I looked. Then I helped. No speech. No victory lap. No dramatic announcement. Work is better when it continues. By noon, a young corporal with abdominal pain asked me if I was the helicopter nurse. I said no. Trina from behind the curtain said, "Yes." I glared at her. She smiled. The story spread anyway. That is what stories do. But I made sure the useful parts spread with it. Count again. Check the board. Listen to the patient. Do not dismiss the quiet person. Do not confuse temporary with unimportant. Weeks later, Coles sent a note through Colonel Hayes. It was written badly, probably with his non-dominant hand. Angel 6. They told me you're pretending to be a normal nurse. Bad cover. Thanks for counting 5. Cole. I put the note in a drawer. Then I took it out and taped it inside my locker. Not where patients could see. Not where staff could make it into legend. Just where I would see it before each shift. A reminder. Not that I had been special. That I had been responsible. There is a difference. People love the reveal. They love the moment helicopters land, the moment the soldier whispers the name, the moment the colonel salutes, the moment everyone who underestimated you realizes they were wrong. But life is not built from reveal moments. It is built from everything after. The next shift. The next patient. The next person who needs you to notice the detail everyone else missed. The next time someone calls you just a nurse, and you decide whether their ignorance deserves your energy. Most days, it does not. Some days, a wounded ranger reaches for your wrist and says the name you buried. And the room learns what you already knew. Nurse was never a small word. Temporary was never the same as useless. Quiet was never the same as weak. And the past you survive does not disappear simply because you change your badge. They called me a temp nurse. They told me to stock carts, clean bays, and stay out of the serious cases. I said nothing. Then the wounded ranger opened his eyes and whispered Angel 6. The colonel saluted. The room went silent. And for the first time in 3 years, I stopped pretending I had become ordinary just because ordinary was safer.